Welcome to another episode of the Truth and Legend podcast. We're on episode 11, and today we have a guest coming to us from Vancouver. And I just found him on the internet, found him watching YouTube, and I thought, man, it'd be kind of cool to talk to this guy because he's in the same boat as we are. We're just kind of starting out on YouTube trying to figure it out, and I just thought it would be a good conversation. So James Frystak is a wildlife cinematographer. He's done a lot of cool stuff. He's actually won an Emmy, which is really cool, and we thought it'd be awesome to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
What's your coolest experience you've had in the last month?
In the last month? Wow. Well, I won an Emmy in the last month, so that was.
Oh, is it that soon?
Oh man, so it's brand new.
Yeah, it was just in December or mid-December, and we were down in LA, and we went down to the Emmys, and yeah, so that happened.
Awesome.
I was gonna put it in the background. I thought, but I'm shopping. I'm like, oh, it'd be too cheesy.
No,
I'm like, I'll keep it out.
No,
there it is.
Show it off.
If you were interviewing me, I'd have come on the screen like this.
Yeah, just hold it. Like, so
I'll just do the whole podcast like this.
Just caress it.
Exactly.
Well, congratulations on that. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. And it's got to be for you. I mean, there's guys that work in the industry for years and years and years and just constantly miss it. I mean, a lot of people get nominated, but man, actually winning one is really cool. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal. Like, I mean, working for Jeff Turner at River Road Films, the guy is an absolute legend, and he's been at this for 30 plus years, and he's just as excited as we are. Like, this being like his first like really really big trophy. So, I'm pretty new at the game. I've been shooting natural history for about 7-8 years, and I got an Emmy already. So, I mean, that was just fortunate because I was on the River Road, working for the River Road camp, and just the team that he's built over the decades. It was inevitable that he was going to eventually crack that code and figure out how to win some trophies. So, yeah.
So everybody listening needs to go watch James' channel, and obviously we'll link to it in the show notes and stuff. But you'll watch the video he did about the Emmy and getting it. And then your road to getting here is it's fairly recent as far as filming terms go. I mean, I think you said you were an electrician, and then you started in 2015 or 16 is when you bought your first camera, right?
That's correct.
And that was more for adventure travel because you were just like, I'm assuming it's like, I got to get out of cold Canada and go to Tahiti or Thailand or wherever, all the places you were going.
Well, there's that. And also I'd go to cold Alaska where you guys are and climbing up and climbed Denali and did some shooting up there. And that was kind of like my first kickoff experience to saying, all right, I'm going to try to work as a freelance photographer, filmmaker. I didn't really know what I was doing. I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but at least back then I really had no idea. So yeah, it was just, getting that camera was just this more of a hobby at first, but then I was kind of forced in a situation, losing my job as an electrician and thinking that I needed to do something different. And I had a bit of savings at the time. So I was just working so much overtime, and I just said, all right, I'm going to take this whole year off, and I'm just going to hone my skills as a photographer and maybe a filmmaker and have a crack at this. And one thing led to another, and it's literally, I was in the right room at the right time. I met the right person, and I feel like to this day I got super lucky. And I was actually chatting with that guy this morning, coincidentally, and I thank him all the time, actually, after all these years, that, man, you gave me that chance, and you didn't know me, I didn't know you, but we just had mutual friends in common, and he just gave me that opportunity to go for it. And with that, I just really ran with it. And yeah.
Is that the guy that you climbed Denali with? Is that who you're referring to?
No, that's a friend of that guy. So
yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah.
But how like scary is that? I mean, you think of big mountain climbing and you think of adventure, but you also think of the danger, and it's like, did you sit back and you're like, I want to do this, and this would be like a great launching point, right? But I've also got to climb Denali where people die. Was it like one of those gut wrenching things? And I always say, if you don't feel a knot in your stomach when you go embark on a new adventure, it's probably not that much fun to go do. But if you have that knot in your stomach, it's one of those really cool adventures. So what was that feeling like when they're like, hey, can you come shoot this?
Oh, that would, yeah. Yeah, I actually almost backed out like a couple of weeks before we were about to leave. Like I was just thinking to myself, like I'm gonna climb Denali. Like I was a avid trail runner, and at that time, like I was in really prime shape for running ultra marathons at that time. So like I was like physically fit and capable of it. And my climbing resume, like I climbed a lot of decent sized mountains around the world, and so it was still within my skill set, but Denali had this allure to it, and it really did freak me out actually. And just a few weeks before we left, I was just like, "Whoa, I don't know about this. This is a little much." Um, and I had a chat with the guy that was kind of going to be documenting while I was up there, and I was like, "I don't know about this. Like, this is feels like it's over my head." But then he actually talked some sense into me, and just saying like, just because we get to base camp doesn't mean we have to go to camp 1 or camp 2, or just because we get to camp 4 doesn't mean you have to go to the summit, right? It's all good. And he just he had that attitude about him, and which made me think like, okay, this is the perfect guy to climb with. So having that trust in your partners is absolutely crucial for sure. And just going, okay, there's no pressure. We don't have to go up. And so with that, we just took it step by step, camp by camp, and made our way up the mountain, and had a great, successful summit. No incidents. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How long did it take you?
It was 17 days, which is actually pretty fast.
That is, yeah.
We had this narrow weather window where we knew there was a big storm coming in within a couple of days. So we wanted to take the summit, get down and get out before this snowstorm like locked in, and we could have been stuck for another week or so. So we just went for it, and yeah, it's great.
Got it.
So
Awesome.
my first foray into Alaska was going to Denali. I used to apply for the filming permits to go into the park, which they don't really do anymore. Well, they may do some filming permits, but not the photo permits, which were such a big thing. And I don't even know if you've heard about those. But the first time you go anywhere, you're just like a sponge for information, right? So that first year, I can remember buying all the little tour books you get at the visitor center and reading every brochure, and you stop and read every sign because you want to know. One of the things that stuck with me for all these years, because this is back in the 90s, is there was a group of guys that climbed Denali from Wonder Lake in one day.
What?
Whoa.
Yeah, and they hauled a pole with them because they had to prove that they had got to the top. So they were like, well, the only way we're going to prove it is we got to stick something up there that you could see from Fairbanks with a telescope, is what they were thinking.
Yeah.
And they actually did it in one day. The story goes is they did it in one day on a route that no longer exists because of an earthquake. So that route has been changed forever and is not possible, but they actually did it. And these guys are doing, I can't remember the date of when they did it. It was very early on. So, they're just wearing wool and carrying knapsacks with a few snacks in it. It's like today you look at these expeditions and these guys are like, well, you're all decked out and you got all the best gear in the planet, and you're just like, but then here's these guys so many years ago, they're just like, oh, let's just try this and give it a shot. Now, the biggest problem with the whole deal was, I think they called them the sourdough boys, but I'm not sure. The thing that happened was there's two summits, and one is just like a few 100 feet taller, and they actually put the pole on the spruce pole that they carried up got put on the wrong summit. So they didn't even get the credit for being at the tippy top. But they did it in a day, which is kind of cool.
That's outrageous.
Can you imagine that?
Okay, so I found it. Okay, it was February of 1910. They did it to settle a bet, apparently. They're from Fairbanks. They hauled a 14-foot flagpole to the top.
Yeah.
Insane.
Crazy.
Isn't that nuts?
And yeah, it was called the Sourdough Expedition.
Yeah.
Wow. I've never heard of that. That's amazing.
I know. And then to do it from Wonder Lake. So I don't know if you've ever been to Wonder Lake, but I believe, and I'm like pulling from the archives, and there's a lot of cobwebs up here, but I think it's 30 miles from Wonder Lake to actually get to the base of the mountain. So they had, I think, but can you imagine just doing all that? What month was that, Brandon?
February.
February? What? How's that possible? It's like you only guys have 24-hour darkness basically at that time of year.
Insane.
Yeah, they must have been hiking in the dark. That's nuts.
Yeah.
All right, enough of that. I just thought that was an interesting story. But on that expedition, did you shoot stills and video? Was that kind of your first foray into video, or did you just shoot stills?
Just stills. Yeah, I just shot stills. I went with but I have like a Canon 70D, I believe, and I had just like a little 24 mil pancake lens. Just kept it super light. I had a pocket full of batteries just to keep them warm. I had no way of charging anything out there, so I was very selective on what I shot, and I had no idea about shooting videos. I did take a couple videos and I look back on them. They're pretty cringeworthy of just me, just pretty handheld, shaky stuff that wasn't really usable for much. And yeah, so yeah, I just shot stills and yeah.
And I think on one of your videos, well, I don't think on one of your videos, you actually refer to the when you started switching over into video, and you're like looking at some of your wildlife footage, and you're like, this is not going to cut the mustard. I'm going to have to up my game. And that, what year was that when you actually made that switch over to video and actually really focusing on wildlife?
Yeah, so I'd already been working in the natural history world, primarily as a camera assistant, and but still, I didn't really think that again was really going to be a career. Like I just thought it was like a kind of a fun, cool little thing I could do, and didn't really understand too much about the industry. And I had my heart set on stills. I really like shooting stills, but yeah, the writing was on the wall that like being a stills photographer in this world of being action sports or wildlife. I mean, there's not a lot of money to be made in that world anymore. It's incredibly competitive, and there's the top 1% could probably do well shooting stills in that world. But yeah, just understanding that video is where it's at is like I needed to make that transition to just started shooting videos. So I won a photography competition, and I ended up winning I went up to Bella Coola and I got a free 2-day tour up in Bella Coola to photograph grizzly bears. A very commercialized kind of place, and they have very strict guidelines on where you can go. It's all run by the First Nation up there, and I got in front of bears pretty regularly, and I'm like just gonna say, all right, I'm just gonna shoot video on this one. And I had this cheap little flimsy tripod and like a 200 mil zoom or 7200 zoom, and just try to shoot these videos. And it was absolutely atrocious. Like I never really appreciated the craft of like creating great videos until I got home and looked at my footage after and said, this is all unusable garbage. Like I can't do anything with this. And so from there, I just started realizing I need to invest in some proper equipment and, up my game. Getting a tripod being probably, arguably, maybe the number one thing that I overlooked. Having a solid head was absolutely crucial. Yeah, because you're doing that long lens work, you really need to have stability and be able to track your animals. Unless you're just going to hit record and keep your hands off it and lock it off and let autofocus do all the work, then you're going to have a hard time kind of panning and tracking and following your subjects. So yeah, so I learned a lesson there. And so I did start to upgrade equipment from there. And I believe, yeah, my first like crack at shooting an actual story of my own was just filming blue heron at a local pond not too far away from where I live. And I just it was actually during COVID, and we couldn't do anything. So, but I could go to this park that was like completely secluded. I'd just go to the beach every day. I grab myself a beer at sunset and sit on the beach and have a beer and have my little camera set up and my tripod and just film blue heron every day. It was nothing else to do. So I just did that. And little did I know at that time, but that blue heron footage has paid off so much over the years, and it's still paying off. Like from 2020, like I get asked all the time. Like I'm apparently in the blue heron expert now because I
Yeah.
sold that footage. Like, you wouldn't believe how much I've made off that footage.
That's awesome.
That's so funny.
Yeah, crazy. So that's like usually my suggestion to really anybody getting started out in shooting wildlife is just go find a subject that you can have easy access to, like I did with the heron. And it doesn't matter what it is. All animals have their own little story, and just try to figure out what are they doing, understand their behavior, get out there and just day in, day out, follow their rhythm, follow their pattern, and just try to find and craft yourself a little story. And I think there's a lot to learn with that. So,
So tell me, what was the camera that you used to shoot that footage with?
that it was a mixture between a GH5 and a Panasonic S1. So that was again just shooting on mirrorless cameras, and still, like me, my tripod wasn't really the greatest thing. It was like a Manfrotto Nitro Tech head, so it had more stability. It had a ball head on it. It had I can actually properly adjust it and actually pan and track and tilt, and actually could like support the weight of the camera that I built out. So I had like an Atomos Ninja recorder on top of that, and try to record like ProRes, so I could have those like nice files to play with, and have pre-record as well. So that was another one that you can do with those cameras. It's like a little hack you can do. Is if you have like an Atomos Ninja recorder, they actually have like a 2 second buffer on there, so you can actually have a bit of pre-record pretty much with any camera. So that's like something I learned I could do with that.
So there you go, audience people. He shot that on with like a DSLR, and
GH5, he
the
said, yeah.
footage is still paying off. So we talk about it all the time. I don't think the equipment really matters these days. All these cameras are really good, right? It just, you've got to get the content. You just got to spend the time out there.
Yeah, and what's crazy about this, like, I can't talk about who it's for, but like, I'm in negotiations right now for a big Netflix series, and they're so like, it's obviously not a Netflix approved camera, but they were in a bind and they needed shots to cover this story, and like, there's always like this allowance on what they can actually use in their series, so they have like maybe a 10% or 12% budget where they can use non Netflix approved equipment. So if you've got a good story, you've got good shots that can like help progress their stories if they need, if they have like a shortfall in their content, then yeah, they'll use whatever they can. Yeah.
How, you guys, I'm like commandeering the conversation, so just jump in and just, if you could throw an orange at me and hit me on the head, but
Oh, you're
whatever,
good.
just raise your hand or whatever. How did you market that footage, and how are people finding it? Is just because word of mouth, or do you have it on a site somewhere, or is that proprietary information that you don't want to share?
No. How did they? Yeah, I mean, when now that I've been to the natural history game, like shooting, at this level for as long, for as long as I have, the industry is actually really small. It's a very, very tight knit group, as you probably know. And so when people are just asking questions, if yeah, you could. It just kind of, it's word of mouth really more than anything. I'm not actively trying to sell it. I do publish stuff on YouTube, and I've been asked for footage off of YouTube before as well. So I just like will shoot kind of on spec some certain things. Like I have a black bear story that I put out there as more of a behind the scenes of me on a black bear shoot, and because of that, like I've been able to use that content and push it out to some organizations to say, hey, like I've got this footage available, and trying to sell my on spec kind of shoots. So it's like another strategy that I'm using to monetize working in this industry.
So you're talking about this as like 2020, but I look on your the IMDb, and you've got credits on film. It looks like maybe linked to your electrical background. Could you maybe like quickly get us up to how you got into that world, or what was that drive?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, when you make this jump to becoming like a photographer, when you leave one job and you don't have anybody actually paying you money to do this, and you decide I'm going to quit and become a photographer with no real revenue, it's it's not gonna it's not gonna go very well unless you're really lucky. And I My previous job was actually like a generator service technician. So I'd work on these big, massive generator systems, and part of my job would to be go to if like some big movies came to Vancouver and they needed like a really large amount of power, they would call our company and rent generators from us. And I ended up being the movie set guy, so I'd go to all these movie sets and like wire up all these generators and supply power for these mega shows like Planet of the Apes or Salutrian or Pirates of the Caribbean. They did some shooting up here, so I got to work on these like really big budget shows. But I was just a generator operator and just would wire up the power supply. But then I got to talk to with a lot of the film crew that worked there, and they're all really cool guys and really interesting guys and girls. And I thought that could maybe be an avenue where I can supplement my income while I try to build up my portfolio as a photographer filmmaker. So yeah, I ended up joining the IATSE union here in Vancouver, and the calls were coming pretty much right away. Like the industry at that time was incredibly busy, like they were overwhelmingly busy. So I was able to pick up jobs working as a generator operator and like a lamp operator. So I just go work on these big, Hollywood-ish. Vancouver is the Hollywood North. They call it North Hollywood. So so yeah, so I work on these big shows, working as a lamp operator, and just like learned so much working on those projects actually. So I'd be the lamp operator, the generator operator, hanging out at the director's monitor and just kind of peeking over everybody's shoulders and seeing what they're doing. They look at me like, "Who's this guy?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm
Right.
the generator operator." Like, what are you doing here? They're so confused by that. But I don't know. I just put myself in there, and then because you just learn so much. If you're curious and you ask questions, I mean, you're not annoying. You can't be like, "Hey, well, you got to stay out of the way for sure." But
Right.
when the right time comes up, these guys are more than happy to share their information. So yeah, so I learned a lot doing that kind of stuff.
That
Yeah,
is
it's pretty
awesome
cool.
story because it's that is it too. When you start in this biz and if you don't have any insight, it's so hard to figure it out and it takes so much time. But if you interject yourself like you did, I mean, if you're a sponge, you can pick up. You don't have to talk to anybody. You can just watch how stuff goes on and say, "Wow, okay, that gives me a little." The next time I actually have a real conversation with someone, I won't sound like an idiot. I can actually throw in at least a couple of things that make me sound like I know what I'm talking about. That's pretty cool.
I think that's a big thing for most people. Like, people need to listen more. Just sit back, be quiet. Like people with decades of experience, and just listen to what they have to say. And there's you learn something from anybody. Like I think it's like working on these movie sets, for example. You don't even know who you're chatting with. Like I can't say who it was, but there was this young PA, and his mom was actually incredibly famous. And he was like 18 or 17. I think it was his first job out of high school, and he's working as a production assistant. He's taking out the garbage and just sweeping floors and stuff like that. And I had no idea who this kid was, and just having like these conversations with this guy. Then I found out who his parents were and who his mom was specifically, and just start chatting with him more. And like that kid has got his head screwed on tight, and he's going to go far in this industry for sure. He just needs to get some experience in this industry, and he's going to do really, really well. I'm sure of it. So yeah, you never know who you're kind of working around when you're on these kind of sets. So I think you can learn a lot from a lot of people out there. So
Yeah, I was curious if that was like if you're always passionate about it and that was kind of like your way in, but that the company kind of got you there. That's really, really neat. I
yeah,
just recently left my job. I've been working as a pharmacist for the last like 16 years. And this past fall, I finally just decided to pursue this route. So I'm kind of in that phase of figuring things out and looking for all the open doors and just exploring and skill building and all the connections there. Things are definitely important. So yeah, hearing it echoed back from you,
yeah,
it's a
Eric, man,
similar
I gotta
story.
say, like one thing for sure, and this is like right now more than ever, I am so grateful that I have what I'm calling a bridge job because the industry current state of affairs of the
Hmm.
industry, it's very, very slow.
Yeah.
And you guys are all nodding your heads. You all
Yep.
agree? Yes. Yeah, it's very, very slow. And having conversations with other cinematographers and directors, producers, and everybody's in the same boat right now. And everybody's going, "What am I going to do?" And my advice to anybody is have maybe some kind of plan B of some sort, just another skill set to build up. So like for people who are coming into the game maybe later in life, like I did, like, I mean, I was 32 when I started. I mean, it's not, I'm still pretty young. But I just so grateful that I had like a bit of a backup plan just in case if, shit hit the fan, and it did.
Hmm.
And so then I have something to fall back on until the industry catches its feet and gets moving again, which it will for sure. Like it's just a matter of time before everything picks back up for sure. So
What's interesting is Brandon's in the same boat too. So you should give him your background, Brandon, just because. But you're the one that's kind of got that. You've had a year now to figure out the backup
Right.
plan, like James is talking about.
Yeah, I was corporate for 18 years and things happened that just gave me a chance to go out and do what I wanted. And so I was the guy that was just like, I can't stand in a box anymore and deal with this. I've done this for too long. And so I'm out of here. I have a camera and I'm going to go film stuff and I'm going to be a freelancer, right? And I was going to grab the world and put it in my pocket. And then that like next day you're like, what have I done? And it's like that moment of like, oh my gosh, I need to go find a job or something. But you're like, just stick with it. And so I'm more on the commercial side. Mine's more small brands, large brands, that type of thing, versus Hollywood movie sets or natural history or things like that. I love wildlife, which is why I'm here. but mine's all commercial. So, yeah, but same thing. Like, just go grab the world by the horns, and turns out that isn't how it works, as you said earlier. And so you got to figure out other things, and you just got to pivot and be adaptable and just be happy to do things. So,
Absolutely.
yep.
Yeah.
So
Whereas
Staying on
Michael has been a DP on, I guess, what was the last one, right? It was the mating game. Oh no, it was Big Beast.
yeah.
So
There's so many things. I mean, it's just like
yeah,
you said, you get so many things going on and then it dies. COVID is what screwed up everything, right? It just was so much production stuff during COVID. I think they just overproduced everything and now there's just like this bottleneck and they're gonna have to get through all that to then want to go out and start producing more stuff, which kind of leads us into YouTube, right? My guess when I was talking with these guys about you, and I'm like, yeah, we should get James on because if he's interested, it'd be great to talk to him. There's no better time than right now to be working on YouTube. Who knows if you're ever going to get Casey Neistat famous or Morton Hilmer or any of these people that have somewhat of a following. But worst case is you're just going to get better at doing what you're trying to do, telling stories. And if you don't have anything else going, why not start YouTube and see what comes out of it? Is that what your thought process was?
1,000%. Yeah, I know exactly. Because, yeah, I mean, it's like with now that it's slow, this is actually giving me time. I'm using this time as valuable, like as much as I possibly can, and trying to stay sharp, stay relevant, work on some skills that I haven't had time to because it's been so busy. Actually, in the last 6-7 years, that's all I've been doing full time is this natural history thing, and now I've got some time to like take a step back. Go, okay, I need to hone my skills on certain things that I've been neglecting, or work on some my own personal story development as well. Like there's so many like stories that I want to like produce as well. And now it's giving me time to start writing pitches and starting to get that stuff together. Cause I don't like just sitting on the sideline. I like to be active no matter what's going on. And and there's always these different seasons, and during this off season, whatever it is, I just got to stay on my game for sure. Because once it comes back, I'm going to be sharp and ready to go and ready to hit the ground running. Yeah.
What's your take on like interesting stories? What we talk about a lot, or I guess maybe not on air, but as individuals, it's you see things like the octopus teacher that came out, right? Which is wildlife based, but it's a very much a human interest story. And I've talked with a couple other DPs that are, legends. And one of them in particular is like, yeah, I think the industry's moving more towards that as opposed to, I mean, I love watching a planet Earth. I love watching these grand, really awesome, just once in a lifetime, like things that happen out in nature. That's cool. But I'm kind of drawn more to this human interest stuff that is part of nature. So it's more through the eyes of somebody that's experiencing it as opposed to just showing this beauty. What do you think as far as that, as far as storytelling? Do you think the industry is going to move more that way? Or do you think they'll always be the planet Earths and that sort of thing?
I agree with you 100% on that. I think that's actually what the industry is craving more than anything is these like, human connections to our planet in one way or another. And these, that my octopus teacher, I use that as reference time and time again of like going, okay, they really had something special there for sure. And I kind of think that really set the bar of like storytelling and like what the future is going to start to look like for the next little while. Like I know from personal conversations that like Netflix is always looking for the next My Octopus Teacher. Like that's what they want. And with like so many of these natural history series, like these Planet Earth or Our Planet, or we joke that like the next big series is going to be called Planet, because they're out of like ways of calling planet something. Because they and like even for myself, like I've worked on so many of these shows over the years, I don't even remember what show it was a part of. I'm like, oh yeah, I shot this eagle sequence, but I forget which program it was a part of because they're all the same, right? Or people try to reference certain sequences from stories. I'm like, I don't even remember what series I was a part of because they're all, they're all the exact same. But like the thing is, like, I mean, this is different storytelling techniques. Technology is getting better for sure. So there's different ways of telling stories that way, but I feel like there's definitely a lack of like really creative, outside the box thinking in this genre. And I think the human element kind of thing is like what's going to, I don't know, come out on top for the next little while for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Again, yeah.
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, so there's one on your YouTube that it was the thing that you're most scared of, and I think
Yeah.
all of us can appreciate this, but
Yeah.
like just walk us through that, right? And so I think you know what I'm talking about, right? Where like it's not gonna be okay. So like just walk us through that and like why, because I think I feel the same way, and it's just terrifying. And
Yeah.
how you got over it and where you're at now.
How to get over it. I'm not like, even like this conversation right here, I was like really prepping myself, pumping myself up to do this because I'm not used to like having the camera turn around looking at me. It's usually I like to, point the camera at things and make nice pictures. And I got to try to make myself look and sound good. I'm like,
Yep.
I don't know. It's a very unnatural kind of feeling for myself. So, but getting over it, yeah, I guess. Okay, so going back to like when you brought this question up, is like, what am I scared of the most? And it's actually just turn the camera on myself, hitting record, and like hitting publish for the world to see. And a lot of it is like in the industry, like I work with some incredible cinematographers, and I work with amazing DPs and directors and producers around the world, and now I'm stepping back and going, I'm not stepping back, but I'm like reverting to YouTube. And a lot of people think, yeah, I even had the idea that like YouTube is like kind of like a lesser art form, and it's not like as prestigious as working for Netflix or Apple TV or Disney Plus and getting these big contracts that are like you get this like badge of honor getting to work for these companies. But my reason for doing this is that there's just so many gatekeepers in this industry that you've got to like really put your it's just getting in that industry is like already challenging enough, and then when it's really really slow and there's not much going on, it's like how do you stand out in that market, I guess. And so YouTube like kind of just takes all the gatekeepers away. You can create whatever you want whenever you want and just put it out there, but also you have to put yourself out there. So that was kind of like the more terrifying thing for myself to do and to try to get over. So but here I am.
Yep. It's terrifying, isn't it? It's like, what do I say? And like the excitement level, you always have to be more excited. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a whole back and forth. Okay. So in that same video, you had all the different things that you've been in front of. And so you've seen polar bears, and actually we haven't talked about it, what you won the Emmy for and what show that is and where you can find it. So maybe give us a glance at that and then just talk about some of your favorite species. And then maybe if you can remember all this, right? Because I'm just throwing questions at you. Like what's next? Like what is your next species that you want to go for? So
Right. Yeah. So ended up winning 4 Emmys overall for a series called Island of the Seawolves on Netflix. It's a 3-part series. Have you guys all seen it?
mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So it's a 3-part series on Netflix featuring some of the iconic wildlife of Vancouver Island. We shot that over like a 9-month period, which is actually a very short turnaround.
Wow, yeah.
Normally, if you're doing a seasonal kind of story, you would have at least two years at it to cracks at every season to get the story. But we ended up like getting, I don't know if it was lucky or they threw a lot of camera days at it. They threw I think 600 camera days
okay.
for that series. So it was just camera crews out nonstop for 9 months. There was no breaks. Mm-hmm. Everybody's just basically doing gear exchanges in the field and saying, all right, good luck. And continue on with the story. Right. So yeah, Island of the Seawolves, we ended up winning 4 Emmys, one for sound mixing, for editing, cinematography, and for writing. And we were nominated for 7. We ended up getting 4. And yeah, we're super pumped
cool.
that's what we walked away with.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I guess to your question about, what am I looking forward to shooting in the future and my favorite species? Like I have like I love wolves. Wolves are probably my favorite animal. I always support my buddy's company, Seaforth Expeditions. Good friend of mine, Tom. And so just dialing in on more wolf stories is something I'm really passionate about doing. Also, I'm always trying to crack that cougar code. I'm trying to get a cougar story. That's the dream. I think every natural history guys likes elusive animals, which I do. That's probably the most elusive animal to like get a decent story out of. So, especially in North America.
Yep.
So yeah, I've got some ideas on how I could pull that off, but it's still like incredibly challenging. So,
Yeah.
still trying to
Well,
figure
and
that one
usually
out.
it's just like it's hard enough to get one shot sometimes, let alone a whole story. So
Yeah,
best of luck with that one. I hope you get
yeah,
it.
yeah.
We had
Time and
Casey Anderson on. Do you know him? He's the tracker, and he has more interactions with cats than anyone that I've ever heard of. I mean, assume outside of like the Patagonia area, but like in North America, like Casey's the man, and he just has all these interactions. It's insane.
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why. Are you familiar with Ben Masters?
I know of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and him and Casey kind of got together, and it seems like both of those guys have pretty good luck with cats.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, because Ben got the ocelot,
That's a
and they
lot.
had
Yeah.
that. They had so much footage. He said that they were doing top down footage, and they found. He said they had more footage than they could use of that ocelot, which is insane.
Yeah, they made a whole
Right.
nother
Isn't that?
PBS
That's crazy.
series about it. So cool. Well, in that, maybe you could talk a little bit about what your role were you mainly just running long lens? There's a lot of drone stuff in that. There's some underwater in the Isle of Sea Wolves, and then there obviously some camera trapping around the wolf dens, I assume, and there's some black bear stuff. I don't know what maybe parts of that film you could talk about that you were involved in, because I might have some questions about specific shots or things.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my primary story was the Vancouver Island marmot. So I shot about,
Okay.
I'd say 95% of that story.
Mhm.
There was a few other operators that came in and picked up some days working with me out in the field on that one. But that was like majority of my story was that one. And then I worked, what was it? I think it ended up being 8 or 9 weeks working on wolf story. So I spent a lot of time working on the wolf story.
Okay.
Worked a lot on the herring spawn. Worked on a bunch of stuff for eagles, particularly the fall episode, and working on that nest quite a
Mm.
bit. That nest sequence was a lot of operators worked on that nest for sure. We all everybody had a crack at that spot, so it was a good one. So yeah, those are my and I worked on some stories that didn't make the cut. It's kind of wild. Like I worked on this big elk story, the Roosevelt elk, and they ended up not using much of it. I think they used 2 shots. It was a great story, but I think they ended up scrapping a whole bunch of stories and just like deciding to stay way more focused on like a couple of really key stories and getting more in depth with these animals, opposed to just throwing a whole bunch of stories at it. So I actually really applaud them for taking that action and just taking the courage to say, all right, let's just drop all those stories and just stick with these key stories. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
cool.
you never really know what's going to rise to the top, too, right? Because you want to just try to get as much as you can, because there might be that awesome elk story, but unless you're out there to figure it out, so you might as well throw some. If you have that many camera days, why not? Just because who knows, you might find that gold that is just amazing.
Or you might strike out on other things too. I mean, like wolves are incredibly hard to film, as you probably know. And so when you look at a story like that, which definitely had the most camera days were thrown at wolves for sure. But there's like really good shit. Like I've been back to these spots time and time again, and I've struck out so many times going back there, and even on that series on it in itself, like I had multiple shoots where I came back pretty much empty-handed. So yeah, it's really tough. So you never know, you might get completely skunked, and so at least you have some backup stories to work on. And yeah,
They hired me to do a shoot for Planet Earth down in Arizona, and we were supposed to get this specific thing. They gave us 2.5 weeks. We didn't get it. I think to your point, it's like you got the big budget. They're sending you to the perfect place, and it doesn't happen. And you talk to the producers, and they're like, "Oh well, we'll try it again next year." I'm
yeah, I've been
like,
on some
"You guys just
epic failures. Like we had helicopters and a Cessna, and we were like, and I've been on like crazy shoots and literally came home with nothing. And you're just like, wow, that's a waste. That's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
But can you still pay me? Because I was out there the whole time. That's what I'm like.
Exactly.
As
Yeah.
long as I'm getting paid,
Oh, we
I'm
don't work
gonna
on
do
like piecework. We worked on
it.
piecework. Oh,
Right,
so
right.
my rates would be way higher.
So, do you, gear wise, do you own your own cameras now? I mean, feel like everybody does. Once you get into it, and when I go out on a big shoot, they're usually just giving me the camera. Occasionally, they'll rent my stuff, but most of the time, they're giving you the camera and the lens and the tripods and everything like that. But for your own stuff, what are you using? And I think I saw in one, or I know I saw in one of your videos, they got the poor man's CN20.
Yeah. So yeah, like just like you said, like a majority of our shoots, they supply us with the equipment. So I've neglected to buy like a really like a CN20, for example. Like I'm not going to throw 80 grand on a lens. Um, but yeah, I got the poor man's CN20, which is the 60 to 600, which is a great lens. Actually, I actually quite often prefer it. There are some drawbacks to that lens, but what it is just you've got that big focal range of 60 to 600. You could stick a doubler on there, and it's pretty versatile. It's lighter weight, significantly less expensive. So yeah, I shoot on that quite often, and it covers a full frame sensor as well. So the CN20 only covers Super 35, so you always got to crop in on your sensor if you're shooting large format like on the Raptor or something like that. So I shoot actually on a Z cam quite often when I'm shooting personal stuff. And I think a Z cam is definitely one of the most underrated cameras out there for just shooting your own personal, like fun, like not even personal fun stuff. Like, I mean, I've sold Z cam footage to big productions, and we use Z cam like quite often if we're trying to do like remote camera work or just as like a second camera or a C camera. We'll always have a Z cam kind of nearby. And so, yeah, I personally own a Z cam, and it's around here somewhere. So yeah, I shoot with that quite a bit. So I'm just doing personal projects. Um,
And then, like you said earlier, the tripod is the requirements for the 60 to 600 aren't near what's required for the CN20. So it's a lot. That's my big thing is like, if I want to go hiking 10 miles to go do whatever we're going to do, I can do it with the 60 to 600 and the tripod, not this one, but the tripod that I need to actually pull it off. But you pack a CN20 with the camera and the O'Connor head that you need to actually run that thing. I got like a mile max. I'll tell people all the time, I'm like, give me an assistant to carry the tripod and I'll go as far as you want me to go. But if I have to carry all this stuff by myself, forget it. It's just not going to happen. I mean, I'll do it, but it's going to take me, you need to add some more camera days.
Right.
yeah, I mean, like for an example, like I mean, I was on a shoot filming wolves and working near this whale carcass, but to get to the whale carcass was like minimum an hour like hike one way.
Oh
And
man.
so to haul your equipment back and forth it's almost impossible. It's just backbreaking labor, and it's not an easy trails. You're hiking bushwhacking, like it is tough going and haul that equipment with a CN20, which I ended up just putting up a tent out in the forest and hid it and threw like $100,000 kit with a $25,000 tripod and just threw it in this tent and had to walk back to camp every day without the equipment and just covered it up with rain gear and hope for the best and just bring batteries back and just have to haul batteries back and forth only. So yeah, that stuff's super heavy. So yeah.
Yeah. That's, I had the same exact thing happen. We were in the Arctic and, you don't want to carry it back and forth every day. I just leave everything in the blind that we were shooting at. Make sure there's no food in it because there was the occasional grizzly or wolverine that would come moving through. So you had to make sure that nothing smelled too much like food, but it is going to have a smell to it, right? So you're like, well, I hope a bear doesn't decide to destroy this blind and get in there. Unfortunately, we didn't have it, but yeah, you just want to you want to be as productive as possible. And so you don't want to be packing gear in and out, and just wearing yourself out that way because you want to be able to perform when it's time to perform. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, and just talking about gear and hauling equipment. But one thing I did do on that series, which ended up paying off like really, really well, and this is a series that hasn't been released yet, filming wolves, and I would bring I had my Canon R5 and a 100 to 500 mil lens, and I had that just with me just in case while I'm hiking come across the pack and that they're nearby, and my camera's out in the blind and I can't get to it, and
Right.
now I can't even, the wolves are in between me and my camera, so what do I do? And that paid off really well one time. I did just like this hike, and all of a sudden so what was happening is I was hiking out and I was just going to film the sunrise with a drone. I was doing some drone shots and just flying around, getting this beautiful sunrise. And then as I'm doing the shot, I'm like, have my head down. I look up and there's a wolf like 20 feet in front of me, just staring at me, and like with his head cocked. I'm like, I hadn't seen a wolf in like a week, and I'm like just staring right at me. I'm like, no way, crazy. So I zip the drone back and I come back, and all of a sudden the whole pack, there's like 10, 11 wolves on this beach with me, and I'm completely alone, and they're just howling, going nuts. And I'm like,
Amazing.
no way that this is happening. So I did a couple quick drone shots, and then I just put that Canon R5 together and just had it up and running within a few seconds, and was able to get some more shots with that too. So
awesome.
That's cool.
Super
Story.
lucky with that one.
Yeah.
We should talk a little bit about that. I mean, I don't know that it really works in this part of the conversation, but so many people are scared of wolves, right? Or they are just pre-programmed through just life and society that, oh, wolves are going to get you. But I've been in that situation too, where you just got wolves all around you, and I've never really felt threatened at all. What was it like for you being out there with those wolves? Did they pay any attention to you? I mean, obviously they know you're there, right? There's no hiding. They just know, but they don't look at you as like a food source. They look at you as just like, oh, well, there's something weird going on, but it doesn't look like it's going to give me any problems or present any danger. So what is it like working around those wolves up there?
In multiple cases, whether it's on the coast or it's in northern Canada or up in the Arctic, just all my experiences with wolves have always been positive. Like, they are very curious animals, and you get this, the whole myth of the big bad wolf, and that they're out there, ravenous killers, and they're gonna get you. That is not the case at all. There is so like not many cases of like human wolf interactions where it led to like any injuries or death. I did some statistics I looked up, and it was like kind of something crazy. Like, over the 100 years, it's been like 10 deaths due to wolves, like 100 years or more. It's like, yeah, pretty rare. I mean, I'm sure people get killed by cows way more often, or killed by deer way more often than wolves. Like,
Right.
it's kind of crazy.
Or moose.
Or like,
Yeah.
household dogs. Actually, there's like 500,000 incidences a year due to household dogs. So
Right.
yeah, they are pretty curious, and they will come up to you, and you get a pack of wolves, and they're all howling and barking and kind of going crazy around you. So it can feel intimidating, but I don't know, when you spend enough time with them, you realize that they're just having fun or something. I'm not really sure. They're just like communicating with each other. They're just aware. Maybe they're alarming. They're just excited for some reason that they saw me, and then I don't know.
Yeah.
And what an experience, right? Because there is nothing like that when you're actually out there. And everybody always talks about being in nature and having these feelings or having these emotions or having this just once in a lifetime experience. It is hard to even put into words when you're 50 yards away from a wolf that's howling, and then more wolves start howling, and it's just like the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and you're just like, this is like, I just can't even relay that feeling that you have.
Yeah, I know. It's a pretty amazing experience. I wish more people could like be in a scenario like that, where they can really start to understand these animals a little bit better, and to realize that they're not actually to be frightened, scared of. I think more people need to have experiences like that.
So switching gears a little bit, and again, guys, if you guys got a question, just tell me to shut up. But as far as your YouTube channel, starting it out, and I know that a lot of your stuff is like, you'll do a little mini story on the bears that you referenced, or just a lot of the different things that you'll create your own story, write your own story, have all this sequence of shots, put it together, put it out there, and that's like a marketing tool, right? But in one of your videos, you're like, I kind of want to share my experiences, but I also want to teach some of this wildlife cinematography. So is that where you're going now? Is that kind of the path? Because you talked about some of the videos that you have planned in your future. Do you want to talk about that, or can you give us some insight as to what you're thinking?
Yeah, it's definitely something I'm still trying to explore. Like when I started doing this YouTube thing, I thought I could just like make cool like wildlife videos and just put them out there and they, go viral instantly. I'd be rich beyond my wildest dreams. But that is definitely not happened. And so, and then I just through a lot of obsessive studying about YouTube and what you have to do to succeed on this platform, realizing that more than likely I'm gonna have to turn the camera on of myself. And I think it's one of those platforms that people go to YouTube to learn something. You can entertain them and they can learn something about these animals and stuff like that. But I think it's a good platform for people who are just wanting to get educated in a different way. And I feel like with my experiences, I've had great conversations over the years with a lot of photographers and other filmmakers, and like, how'd you get in the industry? Like, how'd you get started? What camera equipment do you use? And I'm like, man, I could add a lot of value. I feel like to a larger audience for sure. And why don't I just do it this way instead of just like DMs on Instagram and just these like kind of meaningless conversations? And I could just go more in depth about these processes and my approach to filming wildlife. And I think that like the industry needs more people out there like filming wildlife. I think these stories need to get out there. So like, my experience with the wolves and, me talking about how like, the wolves aren't these like animals to be scared of. I think it just helps. It's like wildlife stories, like they play a crucial role in conservation and protection of our planet. And I think if more people like lean more into video and share these stories about these wild places, that people would actually care more about these places and want to protect them more. So, yeah, I feel like video is definitely a better way to do that than stills. They can tell a great story with stills and stuff like that. But yeah, just trying to get these actual behaviors and teaching people how to do it properly, I think is a benefit to our planet, I think. So,
So you mentioned you love stills. Do you take any pictures still, or is it all just video?
very rare, very, very
Yeah.
rarely. Yeah, my Canon R5 and my long lens are more of a paperweight these days. I don't really use it that often. I'll take it out for recce stuff more. Quite often.
Yeah.
And I still love shooting stills, but yeah, it's pretty rare that I shoot them anymore. So I have like I don't know about you guys, but I have just so many stills just sitting on hard drives, and I just don't do anything with them. Like they're just like, I'm not going to like start selling prints or something like that, or try to make money doing that. It's just more for my enjoyment to take these photos. So
Right.
Yeah.
The hard thing too is we've thought about that. It's like, we got all kinds of cool stills, and we actually have a series that as a way to try to use some of our stills. It's like, let's do a thing called the story behind the image, and because there's some amazing stories that you got this particular image. It's like, well, how did you get it? What led up to it? And then you try to, well, maybe we could sell some prints of that. But then we're talking to photographers. So what photographer is not going to want to put their own stuff up on the wall as opposed to, I'm going to go buy, whatever so I can have, and maybe it would be the case, but I think it's pretty far stretched to get that to happen. You need an audience that just appreciates wildlife, that sits in a cubicle, and they're the ones that are going to buy the images, right? And that's not the people we're talking to.
No,
But
yeah, totally.
and I think with the YouTube stuff, what for me it is you're going to go out and film some wolves, and you want to teach people how to film the wolves, right? And do it responsibly and do it ethically and all that jazz. But I think the bigger story and what people get totally jazzed about is like, how'd you get there? What'd you eat? Did you sleep in a paper, rucksack, or what's the adventure of getting there? It's like there's so much stuff, and I love that stuff. When I watch YouTube, that's kind of like where I'll go, and I watch a lot of random stuff, and I always want to know, like, well, okay, so you went to Iceland or you went to Argentina, but how'd you do it? How'd you get there? So is that part of the plan too? Because that is so much part of the story where people are like, I want to know how James got to this spot.
Yeah,
not that you have to give the spot away, but how'd you get to it?
Yeah, no, I that's so that blackberry story. If you get a chance to watch that one, that's kind of more the direction I'd like to go. But I think with that, it would be like all of that, and also some type of educational stuff where I'm kind of teaching my field practices and like, yeah, exactly how to get there. Take a boat, take a plane, or float plane, or this driver? Was it a local shoot or whatever, right? So I think, yeah, I'd like to add that component in there for sure. Right now I'm just doing stuff here in my house, in my studio, because the weather has absolutely been terrible, like relentlessly horrible. So I'm kind of confined to working within this space right now. But yeah, no, it's going to be a majority of it. And it's just my happy place, just being out in the field, doing it out, doing my content out there as well. So yeah, just setting up, a lot of projects that I feel like I could. Yeah, like I mean, I've worked on I built some hides in preparation for future projects that I've already built hides that are already out there. So I'll do some content working from hides, and so I'm out there actually doing the work and recording myself along the way as well. So yeah,
That's awesome.
I feel like I got two things, but I feel like we have to have a UK glossary, because you said recce, and I guarantee you nobody's going to know what a recce is. And then a lot of
Oh.
people are like, "What the heck is a hide? What is a hide?"
That's a good
So
point.
can you just tell our audience what a recce is and what a hide is?
well, recce is just like a reconnaissance trip where you would go out and scout an area, a scouting mission to see if you know there's any potential in your ideas. If you got a story idea, so you might as well, instead of hauling all your equipment out there and throwing a lot of resources at the specific story, you might as well go. You better go put some, um, get your boots on the ground and go have like a little scout and see if it's even possible. And for a hide, yeah, it's just like it's a blind or a hide, and it's like a camo tent that will spend enormous amounts of time sitting and waiting for animals to come by, and you try to be discreet and just a nice dry space to set up your camera and hide from the elements and hide and try to be hidden from the wildlife. So that's a big one. Is you want to get some shots. You want to get as natural behavior as you possibly can. So if the animal sees you and is just staring at you, well, that's not a great shot. Nobody wants to see that. That's kind of boring TV. So you want to make sure you're getting the most natural behaviors you possibly can, and the animal with the animal not knowing you're actually there. That's when you're gonna get the best stuff for sure.
So
Okay, so when
everybody's. Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to just say, when you're doing your YouTube stuff, are you using the R5?
I'm using a Sony FX30.
Okay,
Yeah,
good old Sony's.
good old Sony's. Yeah, that's actually what I'm recording this on right now. I've got a Sony
Nice.
hooked up to my laptop.
As do
So
I.
is that, I'm not familiar with the Sonys. Is that pretty small footprint? That's something you can just throw in your pocket and just whip it out? And
It's like my FX3 that I carry.
oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
the crop sensor version of the FX3. Exact same body. Like you could every cage, everything is built the exact same. It's just a different sensor size.
Sony's great. It's a small footprint. I mean, I'm lazier than that. I use the GoPro. So if I can't whip out the GoPro, I mean, it's just we did a little video on GoPros not too long ago, and for me, it's if you're carrying all this weight already, the last thing I want to do is throw in another DSLR and carry more stuff. But if I just have a GoPro and I can just hit record and I know I'm going to get it, yeah, the quality of the footage is not awesome, but it still tells the story. And I think with YouTube, you don't have to have everything be beautiful. If your wildlife stuff's beautiful, that's great. That will be that part of that video, which is really cool. But telling the adventure part of the story, I think, is fine on just about whatever, whether it's a small DSLR or a GoPro or whatever. So
Yeah, at the end of the day, the story's king. Story rules all. It doesn't matter what your camera is. You could have your cell phone. It doesn't matter. Get some good, clean audio and have a great story. And then I think anybody could probably win on this platform. You just got to have a great, compelling story that people are interested in, and they'll forgive like bad, not bad or subpar or whatever you want to call it. The visuals, just as long as you have a great story to tell.
Okay, so you're out in the field. You're doing this long documentary, right? What's the first meal you eat when you get back to the city?
Oh, I actually have a good answer for that. There's a restaurant here in Vancouver called Taco Fino, and
Okay.
it's super close to my house, and it's like fish tacos, and that's like a staple. And depending on the shoes, so like definitely there's like this I like usually it's pretty backbreaking labor, humping gear all over the place, and so I usually get a massage, and then
yep.
I go to Taco Fino, and I just collapse for a few days.
Just
and
crush.
Just crush, yeah.
Awesome.
That's actually my ritual. Like I do that pretty much. Yeah,
That's
every
awesome.
shoot.
That's awesome.
With the YouTube stuff, so we put together this team. So Brandon, Eric, and myself. It's like, okay, we can work together because it's just a lot of content that you're trying to produce, right? And it's like spread the work around and work together sometimes, work individually sometimes. Are you working on your own, or do you have a team put together, or are you doing all your own edits? How's that working for you?
Yeah, I'm doing it all by myself right now, and I
Oh,
admire that you
geez.
guys have this team because I'm getting my ass kicked. And it feels like it because like yeah, it is. You wear so many hats when you have to
Mhm.
put this YouTube stuff together. I'm just starting to understand now that what's ahead, and like yeah, this is going to be a challenge for sure. So yeah, I've worked with some other people before, and that's when we had some creative differences on what it was going to look like, what a channel was going to look like. And now that it's like turned into what it is evolving into, which is like turning the camera around, I don't think, yeah, it's kind of like shifted. So yeah, I still definitely love to like build a team eventually, but I don't really know what that looks like yet because I'm still trying to figure out what this channel is going to look like for myself. So yeah,
Okay, so you're
Just
editing, you're doing everything then.
yeah,
What are you editing in?
DaVinci Resolve,
Okay, us too.
yeah,
And like that alone is just like it does so much.
yeah.
And yeah,
you
it's
can't keep up with everything. I constantly am calling Brandon. It's like, how do I go full screen? Or all these dumb things. And then I'm like, oh, I can't just bug him like every day when I have a question. So, but the cool thing is YouTube has every answer that you could possibly want, but it's just the time that's required to take the time, go figure it out, then come back and try to apply it. Color, color correction is like so
Mm.
awesome in DaVinci, but it's an art. It's not like, I would love to have a full time colorist that would color all our footage because I feel like what I do is it's okay, but it's not what the footage could be.
Mm.
So I admire you for actually embarking on this on your own just to try to put out that
Well, I
amount of
feel like it's
content.
one of those things that like now that I've gone through this process and made a few videos now, I got to see like one, what do I like doing, what am I good at doing, and then going, okay, now that I've done like so many, like worn all the hats that I possibly can wear, then I go, okay, well, what do I really struggle at? What do I need help with? And so that now I can go, all right, like I mean, my thumbnail designs, I'm not great at that, and I'm constantly going all bouncing
yeah.
ideas off people, and I still trying to figure out that thumbnail game and titling and descriptions and writing all that kind of stuff. So I could find somebody that would be really interested in building that stuff. That would be amazing. So that's something I'm looking at trying to outsource one way or another. And also like I like scripting. I really actually like editing. I like shooting. So it's like I like doing those things, but in the long run, if I could find an editor for sure, I think editing would be something. If I could take that out of the equation, my editing process, that would just free me up so much more to create more content and just
Right.
because I've got so many lists of ideas of stories that I would like to do, but it's just like it's a time thing for sure. So
Editing's that nice check, right? Like you go out in the field, you film something, then you get back to the table, you edit it, and you're like, okay, I did get it, or oh, I messed it up, and that's why I like editing. It's just like a good check and balance of I'm still doing a good job filming. Whereas sometimes I feel like if I'm not editing everything all the time, I find myself slipping sometimes on some of the stuff in the field that I'm filming.
yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. Yeah, then you know what shots on your last shoot you learn. You go, oh, I forgot to get like that really nice tight shot of the feet, or an exiting frame for just a little bit longer. Get that shot where the animal leaves frame and don't cut right now. Let it breathe for just a couple seconds, and then give it some time. So you learn these little things, and when you're in the edit and you're editing your own stuff, you're like, the next time you're in the field, you'll hopefully learn from that and just make sure you don't make that same mistake because yeah.
So I noticed you changed the thumbnail on the Emmy video, the YouTube.
Yeah.
Was that like, okay, well, it's not getting views and they might not like that thumbnail. I mean, I found myself second guessing all the time, and I'm with you. It's like I don't know what people are gonna like, and then you see these Mr. Beast videos or Mr. Beast thumbnails, or I don't know, there's so many, and everybody's giving this dumb look or this like, like a look of like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, how does that resonate with people? I don't get it. The formula for thumbnails is like a job in itself.
Yeah, I think it's like one thing I'm starting to like think more about is like who is my target audience? Like who is it that I'm actually speaking to? Like I have a specific audience in mind, and that Mr. Beast kind of look and like that everybody's got that dumb looking face, whatever. That's not going to resonate probably with the people. Hopefully, it is not going to resonate with the people because I'm not going to do that. Like like that classic look, like it's always surprised and like I just cringe at the idea of even trying to do that, and I refuse to do that actually. So yeah, don't expect that from me. And yeah, like changing my thumbnail is definitely like it's that Oscar or sorry the Oscar. Hopefully, I get an Oscar next time. But the Emmy Award video that I did, yeah, it's like way underperforming. It's like not doing very well at all. I'm like, well, maybe it's a thumbnail. Like I can't change the content, so I'll just try a different thumbnail. It's interesting because like now like it had this like quick little spike and then it just leveled off with its reach, and its reach is just like it had like 3 impressions in the last 5 hours. Like, okay, this video is probably dead. Who knows? I don't know what's going to happen with it in the long term, right? Like maybe it'll kick off eventually. But so I'm like, okay, well, it didn't initially kick off, so I guess I'll change the thumbnail and try something else different. So I think that's definitely like a number one thing I need to figure out is like the thumbnail game for sure, and probably trying to hire somebody to do it because there's like some great graphic designers that are out there that can do this stuff, and this is all they do, and this is all they think about, and they just have that attention to detail of like what's working on YouTube and stuff. So yeah.
To be fair though, if it was doing this and then it plateaus, that's probably not your video. I mean, people don't go from watching something to like not watching it in a second. So like we have a lot of charts that do the same thing. Like it's going up, 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 and then it just flatlines, and you're like it was turned off almost. And so you're like, okay, I see what's happening here.
So it's that whole YouTube algorithm game that you got to play. And I think as the newbies and as us just all kind of starting out, we have to prove to YouTube that we're in it for the long haul, right? And it's just one of those deals where you're just like, and so we have these conversations a lot. It's like, well, I have this really good idea, but should we put it out now or should we wait till the algorithm likes us more? It's it's like, what do you do? And then the keywording and tagging. Mm-hmm. I got an email out of the blue the other day, and it's just some bot or probably some who knows what, but it's like, well, we noticed that this video that you have it's a good video, but your tags suck. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, but I don't know. I mean, we use vidIQ and we've tried some other stuff, and I think that's an art. If you actually find a thumbnail artist that is awesome, please share their name because we could use that too. And same with the tagging and same with the keywords. And then Brandon is pretty brilliant at using ChatGPT. So a lot of the stuff that we do, and he's figured out ChatGPT is awesome if you know how to ask the right questions.
Yes, that's the new is the cure, like how to ask what to ask and how to ask it. Yeah.
Well, and then you don't use what it says. Like that's the key thing. So like you just don't dump ChatGPT outputs into your stuff because it won't work. Mm-hmm. And you have to, it's a great first draft, right? And so you have to then curate that and then ask it. But so like what a GPT is, it's a generative process that is learning from what you're inputting into it. So the more you input into it, the more it learns what you're asking for. And so it's one of those things like you're going to get, the more you do it, the better it's going to be, but you have to continue to use it and train it. And so you have to be very thorough of like, I don't like this. Try to use, I don't know. I'll have to come up with an example because that was a pretty terrible answer and descriptive for the audience. But yeah, it's generative based on what you're teaching it and what you're asking it. And so if you just like give up halfway through, then it's like, okay, then I did a good job and they got what they want because they left immediately. Whereas you're kind of fed up with it and it's not working well. And it's a whole process and it's terrible. But I mean, sometimes it's just good to just be like, I need this idea because I have writer's block or whatever it is, and so you throw it out there, and it'll say something, and you're like, well, that's a terrible idea, but that is, if I can use this, and it's the complete opposite. So, it's worth probably just making some requests, I'd say, out there for you. And
Yeah, no, I definitely love ChatGPT as well. Yeah, I mean, like often I'll be scripting and I'll just say, I need another way on how to say this, and so I'll take a whole paragraph or a sentence or even a word
yep,
or whatever. It's like, what's a how can you rewrite this? Give me like
yep,
10 different variations of this
yep,
and use it, in this tone or whatever. And yeah, usually just it's a good soundboard for sure, and just like
mhm,
yeah, throws you like a different curveball of just like, oh,
exactly.
a different way of thinking about your problem. So yeah, it's
Mhm.
a great tool for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because the email that Michael got that he's referencing, so they're like, oh, your video is doing terrible based on all these things because it got a rank of 50 out of 100, right? And so what actually happens is they have all these rankings for keywording and tags and all these things. Well, we had done well on all of that. It was 5 out of 5 for everything. But because it had minimal views, we lost out on half of it. And
Hmm.
so that's why the view was 50. And it's like, for all these poor chaps that don't actually understand all of this, they're probably going to pay all these people. And all they're going to do is just try and buy viewership or something and try and push that up. But I don't know. It's a
Never ever. I think that's like the worst strategy ever for
mhm,
sure. Yeah.
right.
Just create
Yeah, you
content that people actually engage with, or else, yeah, you're just gonna get just these like,
totally.
yeah, followers that are not engaging with your content. So like asking your brother, your mom, or whoever to follow your account is not actually like watching your content. They're not going to engage with it. And with the algorithm, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to push that content out to your immediate followers, your subscribers. And if they're not watching it or engaging with it, then they're thinking, oh, this is probably a terrible video. So
Yep.
like it's
Yep.
not let's not push this any further and just kill it. So yeah, just organic growth is, I think, the key to making it actually work for sure. So
Does AI scare you? Do you think like some of the stuff Brandon does is like amazing to see? Oh, I just had it create this moose caricature that we'll use on a t-shirt or
I'll talk
something.
about that. Yeah.
So I see this other thing where videos being created now, and I'm like, is it going to create the perfect wolf sequence just artificially? And I kind of feel like there's no way. There is no
Mhm.
way that I would be able to pick it out in a second. But maybe not, as it gets smarter and it gets I have a nephew that works for Google, and he works on the AI team, and it's scary when you talk to him. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like so real, and it can be so deceiving that you would never know. But I feel like real human interest stories are real.
hmm.
Is that going to be able to be created by AI, or is that? I feel like you have to embrace it. You can't say, "Well, it's like people that were switching from film to digital. If you didn't switch, you just got left way behind." So unless you embrace it, you're going to get left behind. But how's it going to fall out? And I hope that nature stories are never told via AI.
Well, I mean, they are. I mean, like, when you look at prehistoric planet,
Oh yeah.
Oh,
or yeah, life on our planet. I mean, all that is CG, and it is phenomenal. Like, I mean, just like the texture of the animals and the shadows and the way they move, you're like, wow, that's actually pretty good. Like, I mean, we will all know that it's fake because it's like dinosaurs and stuff like that. But like when they start making stuff that's like, let's just say like they're going to do polar bears up in the Arctic, and let's see them have a crack at that and see how realistic that looks. And that's what scares me, that they could pull that off quite convincingly and tell whatever story they want, and then we're going to be in some trouble for sure. But then that's where like the human interest stories, I think, are going to be more I can't talk. I'm thirsty. Prevalent in this industry because yeah, you can't. I don't. We're a long way from being able to fake that, I think. And yeah, just I think also people are going to know. There's got to be some kind of like marker saying that this is all digital. This is all digitally enhanced. This is not a real story. And I think there's going to be some, you know, the authenticity of like what these actual stories in these films are. People are going to want to know, is this like an authentic real film, or was this just made in a lab somewhere? And I think there's going to have to be some kind of like way of like, and I think there are like protocols out there like trying to make sure that that stuff is being recognized as for what it is. One film, I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's actually a docu series. It's called Light and Magic. Have you guys seen it?
Mm-mm.
No.
I don't think
No.
so.
Light and Magic. That one I've watched this one particular episode multiple times. I think it's a 5 or 6 part series. And Light and Magic is based on George Lucas's company, Industrial Light and Magic. You know what he had done with the whole world of like Star Wars. Like I mean, he is the game changer of like visual effects and what he's done with the way we watch movies today. And going through this whole process from his stardom and to like what the industry ended up becoming is what's going on right now as we speak. It is so like incredibly, there's so many parallels of like what's going on. So like they get into this one episode and they talk about Jurassic Park, and like so when they made Jurassic Park, they made like they had like a lot of like puppet masters, and they were actually going to do everything with claymation, stop motion. That was just like that's just the way they did everything, and they're the best in the world, the top puppeteers or what do you want to actually call them, or model makers in the industry. The best of the best are working on Jurassic Park to make this thing. And there's these two guys in this back room, and they decided to go, well, I bet you we can do this digitally and just make these digital dinosaurs. And then they just in the back room started like modeling on their own time. They didn't tell anybody they were going to do it. And in the back corner, they just put it on a screen, and there's some big executives are doing this walkthrough, and they look at the screen and they see this moving digital dinosaur and it's walking around. They're like, what is that? Like, what is that? That's obviously for Jurassic Park. And George Lucas didn't even know what it was. He was like, I don't know. And then they actually made like this, like, rendered copy of it, and they put it on the big screen, and they were like out of their seats. Like, no way you just did that. That is just changed the game forever. And then they do like this cut to the puppet master guys, and they go, well, I guess I'm now extinct.
Oh, jeez. What a line.
That guy's job just ended like that.
Yep.
Wow.
It was
Yeah.
over. Like, it was just like, oh my God, that is crazy. So, I mean, I didn't like telling you, I didn't ruin anything of this whole story. So, like, if you guys get a chance,
I'll watch it
it is-
again.
it
Yeah,
is wild.
that's
It's just like a
amazing.
beautiful, like it's really well shot and interesting stories for sure. And it's just like goes to show like what the future is like for us right now in AI. It's the exact same thing. There's people that are going to go like this, and there's people that are going to lose their careers and their jobs and their way of living and the way they've always done things, like digital and film. It's all this evolution, and if you don't embrace it and go with it, then you're going to be extinct and left behind. And grumbling about talking about the old days and the way it used to be, and we're not going back to film. You know what I mean? Like, it's just,
Right.
So.
Yep, I agree 100%. That's why I'm really curious to know what people think, because a lot of the older generations really have a hard time changing because they're like, I spent my whole life doing this, but you got to do it. And then the younger people, I just, you wonder are they going to live in this artificial world forever, or do they actually want to go out and have these experiences for real?
That's a good question. Yeah.
I think there's probably, we talked about Casey Neistat, right? My hope, I guess, is that there's always going to be a group of people that are looking for that human connection. And that's why Casey Neistat did so well. Peter McKinnon, right? The other Canadian that people talk about. But it's like people are always looking for those human connection points, even if it's not a face-to-face. And I think those stories will continue to be made organically versus AI. I just don't. How do you script something like this from an AI perspective, right? Like I know it's possible, and they're very smart, and especially the more you train it, but will it have that human connection? I don't know.
Yeah. It's the authenticity. I think that's just going to be like the deciding factor of like, the way people view and want to engage with, online world and content, right? Like, was this real? Was this fake? I want to know, right? Like, it's going to get really good, but like, even our conversations right now, it's like the little nuances, right? I'm, stumbling on my words, trying to find my words. It's just like a very natural kind of like thought process of some people, and just everybody has their little nuances. Will AI be able to do that? Like, I don't think it's
where I would love to see AI go from like what we're filming is there's some, you're seeing it in the automotive world right now, and also like landscape and on the real estate side. But they'll do like these 3D renders, right? Where on a car, they'll scan all the sides and then they'll scan all the periphery, and they can almost do like a drone fly through of everything. And where it'd be really cool is to start doing that with wildlife. And if you can do it without being super, like, because you don't want to impact the behavior on it at all. But if you could start to have it where you'd have a 3D, like you put on an Oculus or whatever the new iPad or the new
Vision
Apple
Pro.
Glass Vision, thank you.
Mhm.
You put this on and then you can start to interact with it. I mean, that's a whole nother level that I think would be really interesting, that could be wildly educational, right? And still help and it progresses the world, but you still need a guy sitting in the field filming it all. If anything, you need more people out there filming because you need all these different angles of the same thing then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 2 years ago, I shot that. I had it was
Oh, really?
a BBC production, and man, it's not out yet, so I don't know if I could talk about it. But yeah, I basically had to film this thing with stills so they could create
Mm-hmm.
this environment of this actual thing. And there's no way I could have shot it with video, but with stills I could go in and then they could build the model. And I had to record everything. I had to record angle of shots, and they used the geometry of everything to build it all. And I've not seen it, it's still not out, but it was going to be recreated because what they were trying to get, I could have sat there for 300 days and never got it.
Right.
But it does happen. They were just going to have to do it digitally as opposed to just paying me to sit there for a year trying to get that one shot that happens.
And that's where AI is
So,
probably going to help, right? Is if you missed a shot, if you need to render something in the future that doesn't actually that's probably where I see that helping near term.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's what you said, James. I think it's all replacing the non-perfect is going to be
Mm-hmm.
hard. I think just having, I jump in my van and I'm going to drive to some place. It's the flat tire moment, or it's the making the coffee in the morning and doing something dumb that I don't even know. I mean, I can't even think of something good example, but I think it's that human interest, that's just that human connection that will be hard to. But who knows? I mean,
What are your thoughts on like this is something I kind of battle back and forth with, is like, the really high curated stuff versus like, the old school Casey Neistat stuff of just getting out there and going for it and just like making it happen now. I feel like I think there's going to be a shift of like this like high production value, super glossy, really well scripted, perfect timing on everything stuff. And I feel like, I don't know, I'm hoping because it would make, you know, it's just more realistic when you see
Yeah.
like a normal person just going out there and just doing the stuff. You know what I mean? You've got the gear, you're out there, you get the shots, and you tell the story. I'm leaning into things like that more often than some guy who's just got everything just perfect. Like every little zipper is just like perfect shallow depth of field and just perfect tracking,
Right.
and the lighting is absolutely just spot on, and the timing is just like nailed on everything. And I don't know. I'm kind of like losing interest in like, just seeing it just always so perfect. And, they've got this monster team trying to tell like this stuff. And I don't know.
I think we're all in the same boat. Like or at least I know Michael and I are because we've talked about this. Eric, I don't know where you're sitting, but like that's all. I I find myself not engaging with any of that stuff anymore. Even like the highly curated thumbnails, I'm kind of like, meh. Like I
Mm,
just don't want to deal with it sometimes because there's
mm,
so many times where you click on those thumbnails and it's like clickbait, right? And it's like
yeah.
how I did this, and then they like start in their bed, like waking up, and you're like, what? Just show me what you're telling me you're going to show me, and I don't know. I
Into it. Like, let's go.
right,
Like,
and like
click
let's
on
just like
it.
get to it, right? And I, but at the same point in time, I feel like I'm not normal in that regard because everyone else just loves that highly curated stuff because it looks good. I mean, there's no doubt it
well,
looks
we
Yeah.
think
great.
that it might be that they love it. I don't know. I'm with you. I mean, you referenced it earlier. I like the Casey Neistat early stuff better than what he's doing now.
Mhm.
I like the Peter McKinnon when he first started. I'm not into what he's doing now, which because it is too perfect, and he's got all the perfect studios, he's got everything. So that original raw kind of like organic stuff is the stuff that got me interested in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So YouTube's the perfect place for it, right? Because you can get whatever you want. You can get the perfect, and you can get the real, the organic, and we'll just have to see how it resonates and how it moves along, and try to produce the content that people want to see. But really, I don't want to produce content just because it's successful. I want to produce what I want to produce, and if people like it, great. If they don't, then I'll go flip burgers for a living.
So what's your content strategy right now? Like, are you guys like how regularly are you posting right now? And like, do you have like a content schedule you're trying to follow, or are you just what's your process right now?
So we post a short every day. During the weekdays, Monday through Thursday, we only post once a day. That is mainly from our podcast, because we're trying to grow the podcast right now. Just because we there's minimal name out there, right? Like you didn't know who Truth and Legend podcast was. So that's the near term focus. On Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, we double post. So we have a morning post with the podcast, and then we'll do a wildlife or something else in the afternoon, just because it is a slow time for filming and adventures right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we try to post every week for a long form video, and then big adventure at least once a month.
But we're throwing tons of mud against the wall, right?
Right.
So it's like we have originally we started out like, let's do quest videos, and that quest video is just going to be, let's go pick a species and let's cover that from start to finish, from the minute we walk out the door with our gear to how we get. It's just like what we were talking about. It's the adventure of getting to where we're going, filming all that, and then the wildlife interaction or whatever we got that was part of the quest, and then coming back. But that's tough because it's the time of year. I mean, February and March is terrible in Colorado for finding cool wildlife stories. So, but the summer's chock full of them, right? So we can do plenty of that in the summer. And a lot of it in the get go is, what's the formula for that? I didn't know. I spent all summer trying to figure out a formula for. Eric and I do moose. If we're not busy on a shoot and I'm in Alaska, it's that time of year, I'll spend every day for 40 days filming moose. So as we were doing that this year, I'm like, what is this? How do we tell this story? What's the best way? Do I want to be walking down the trail and talking, and then figure out how we want to shoot the wildlife and incorporate that in with this real world kind of stuff? So I'm kind of deviating off the subject, but we have the quest things. Then with the quest things, it's like we may not get everything done. So here recently we came up with this idea where you go out to do a quest thing that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Well, we don't have all that. We maybe got the beginning and the middle, but we failed to get the end, either because that behavior is gone, or it snowed and now everything's changed, or we didn't have time to go do it. So now we have a little series that we just started putting out that's called Loose Ends, where we're going to take all that stuff that didn't get kind of completed, quite done, but there's enough there that's cool. So now let's just take 3 of the not completed things, put them together, and then use our transitions, which in a podcast style format, where we just get on and say, oh yeah, remember when we went and did American Dippers and we didn't get the nesting sequence because I got on a shoot and I had to go out and do it, or the nest was in a pretty obscure place, we couldn't get it. So we build that as one whole segment called Loose Ends. And then we've got the podcast, and the podcast is something that's easy, right? Because we can put out one of these every week, no problem. And it's pretty quick to edit. We do edit all these. It's not like we just throw it up, but we'll just make it sound perfect so that it's not me sounding like an idiot like I do a lot of the times. And then what else do we got? We got
how to. We're trying how to videos.
How tos.
Yep.
And then we have one more. What am I forgetting?
And then just some wildlife segments.
And all of this is going on the same channel. Like you got podcasts, you got all these like variables are all like sticking to one board on your.
Basically, we have like 4 or 5 playlists. So one would be the podcast, one would be the quest videos, one would be the loose ends, and then one would be how to.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
But we can kind of do that with three people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether we can keep that going, I don't know.
Oh, it's exhausting.
It's
It's a
awesome.
lot of work. I mean, the good thing about right now, not having a lot of work and not being out on shoots, is there's time to do it. So maybe that'll give us the time to figure out which one of those is the one that everybody wants to see. I don't know. You said you've done a lot of research. I'm sure you watch Gary Vee. I'm sure you watch Colin and Samir, all these people that are just completely studying YouTube.
Yep.
Once you see these guys, I mean, the one thing that Gary Vee's saying is podcasts are it, man. You can get so much content out of one podcast. So the amount of shorts that we can produce out of this particular podcast, I mean, there's little moments of brilliance that we've all had during this podcast that would be a great short.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully that promotes the podcast so that in the short you link to the podcast and then you start growing that audience.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know that we know what we're doing, but we're doing it.
Or you're doing it. Yeah. And that's just it. You got to just kind of throw everything at it. Just see what sticks, see what works, see what workflow is working best for you. And, what are people engaging with? Actually, that's the big one. Like what are people more interacting with, and that you can replicate again and again and again. So, yeah, I mean, like I say, my Emmy video is not doing well, so I changed the thumbnail and everything like that. But it's kind of crazy. I've actually gotten a lot of messages just off of that one video, like in the comments, and then offline, I've gotten a bunch of direct emails to me, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. People are actually really resonating with that content, even though it only has like a couple, not even 200 views. But I'm like, oh, the engagement was really high. That's really interesting. So. Yeah, and as personally as my content shifts, YouTube's still trying to figure out, well, what is this guy actually doing? Mm-hmm. So they're trying to figure out how to categorize, myself and yourself, and trying to how to slot you in, how to share your content out there. So yeah, it's definitely a learning curve for sure. But I really enjoy it though. Do you guys enjoy doing this? This is
so much.
I can tell you do enjoy it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's fun. Well, it's just like you control everything, right? If you mess it up, it's your fault. If you miss something, it's your fault. If it goes really well, you get to take all the credit for it. It's just, I don't know. It's no holds barred. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, we just need to make $1 jillion doing it.
I mean, I can tell you what we've made here in the past week off those videos we posted.
Oh, really? Oh, no way.
Yeah, right? Are you monetized
How many
yet?
zeros?
No.
It's neither are we. So
no, not even close. Actually, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I've got another friend, my buddy Henrik. He's a photographer, and him and I have been bashing ideas. We're like similar-ish niche, but he's got a different way of doing his thing. He's a really really talented guy, and so he's been doing quite well. So him and I bounce a lot of ideas off each other, and he's starting to realize that turning the camera on himself and not just showing pretty images of animals is starting to work way better, and his his view counts are getting significantly higher, and his watch time is getting significantly higher, and like, okay, well, there was definitely something there for him. So he's starting to lean into more of a how to, bit of like gear, kind of talking about gear a little bit, and that's kind of the reason why I go to YouTube, right? Like I want to go to YouTube, I want to learn something interesting and be entertained at the same time. So yeah, it's just like trying to figure out what's finding your voice and finding your workflow, and then just going with it and leaning into it.
Well, and the nice thing about YouTube is I don't think it's as cutthroat as, I'm going to say Hollywood, just to categorize that, kind of Hollywood versus YouTube, right? Like if they watch us, they're going to watch you. They're going to watch Morton. They're going to watch all of these people, and there's not enough content out there for that. And I think that's one of the reasons that they have to go back to the Netflix series and watch that, because there's just not enough content out there on YouTube. Right. So I think the more of us that are making it, the better off we're all going to be. And I don't think there's as much gatekeeping on YouTube side. I mean, there's always gatekeepers, but for the most part, like, we'll talk to you about what we're doing. You'll talk about what you're doing. And I mean, there's always like the secrets of like locations, right? But that's more for protection of the animals, because we don't want just a bunch of tourists going there and ruining it. But I don't know. I think there's more content's going to be better for all of us, I think, in the long run. So we'll see how it all goes.
Yeah, I think, what? I mean, we look at this, like, where we're at with like YouTube and social media and the way, content developers are creating content and sharing stuff. I still think it's the Wild West in its infancy. It's not going anywhere. And if anything, they're just going to keep building it up more and more. Like I heard some like weird stat that there's like 2 billion people like watching YouTube or something crazy like that, like a crazy figure. And there's more people watching YouTube than there are watching Netflix, Disney, Amazon, like all these streaming platforms combined by a lot. There's more people watching that. So it's like, if you're looking for audience, I mean, it's right there. You know what I mean? Like if you want to tell stories and you want to have a crack at it, I mean, like there's no gatekeeper. You just go make it and put it out there. And yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
and even
think the
if it
only
is,
gatekeeper for us right now is the algorithm, right? And all we have to do is prove that we're going to stay in the game. And I think because it's exactly what Brandon referred to. You get up, 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 and then it flatlines. Well, it flatlines when YouTube quits putting it out on their feed.
right.
So as long as you keep doing that, I think they let it go a little longer, and then they let it go. You hit the 3,000 watch hour mark, and then you get all these little few more tools, and then you hit the 4,000 mark, and then I think it ends up working where then you're on your way. But you've got to prove that's the only gatekeeper is you proving to YouTube that
Consistency.
you're going to stick with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if it was easy, then everybody would have done it, and there'd be no money to be made in this. So I think, like, that having that challenge and making it actually, having that as a threshold. There are thresholds out there, and and everybody, you put up a video and it's gonna go crazy, and you're gonna make tons of money.
Right.
And like, just makes sense, right? So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. I was just gonna say, even if it is 2 billion people, like that means there's another 5 billion people that can tune in. Can you just think about that, right? It's insane. Like I can't even fathom that number.
Well, we've gone about an hour and 45 minutes, so I think we've probably taken up enough of your time. But man, we really appreciate having you on the podcast, and I would love to stay in touch with you offline and just follow you along, and maybe we can get a chance to go shoot something. I've got some questions for you once we get done with this podcast about a couple of the shots that you got. Not necessarily locations, but just more behind the scenes that I don't think anybody's really going to care about. But we really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Cool.